It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Only in Britain in 2025 does it take a panel of 3 High Court judges, no, Supreme Court judges, to tell us that a woman is an adult human female and that imposters are imposters just the same. And only in America does a man campaign to be President of the United States on a peace platform, dressed up in the garb of a Nobel Peace Prize laureate in waiting, and then find himself up to his armpits in other people's blood, all within a few months of taking office. And Trump increases the tariff on China to 245%, at least the last time I looked. Why bother with tariffs? Why not just say, don't even think about trying to sell any of your goods or services here. After all, the Chinese will definitely win that particular race. It's all coming up in the next 2 hours. It is the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Never in all of my life did a phenomenon sweep all before it and cow and terrorize the big civil institutions of the land, be embraced by all of the mainstream political parties like the Transmania, which was slaughtered today on the altar of the Supreme Court in London, where the learned justices unanimously defined that a woman is an adult human female. It seems ridiculous even to have to state this, but anyone who's lived through the last decade or so realizes what a nightmare this has been. Realizes that little girls going in for boxing are likely to get their lights punched out by a man pretending to be a little girl. that little girl swimmers are likely to be left trailing in the wake of men pretending to be little girl swimmers, that runners, that jumpers, that wrestlers, that all kinds of athletes would not only be forced to share their dressing room with someone with a big swinging dick, but are likely to be overwhelmed by the superior physical strength implicit in being born a male. Now, you may think from the foregoing that I give a toss what people live like, who they love, how they dress, and what they do, but you'd be mistaken. I'm a good time kind of guy. I treat everybody exactly as they want to be treated, and I have always done so. But facts are chiels that win a ding, as we say in Scotland. Facts are facts. They cannot be changed by whimsy. They cannot be changed by a wave of political correctness even. They cannot be changed by making it illegal to state the facts. They cannot... You think I'm joking about that? My monologue so far would, before today's ruling by the High Court, have left me open to prosecution. I mean it. Criminal prosecution for saying what I have just said, even though I'm saying it in my own home, and I'm not making that up either. The reality is that the political class in Britain, and I presume in other Western countries, went overboard hook, line, and sinker. They swallowed whole the nostrum that someone can be a woman merely by declaring themselves to be so. And this led to all kinds of complications, all kinds of crimes, all kinds of loss of rights for actual women. For example, tomorrow the so-called Scottish government is going to have to empty a very large number of male prisoners from the female prison estate. It became quite a racket, you know, with all kinds of unexpected side benefits for prisoners to, whilst on remand or even whilst already sentenced and in prison, to identify as females and have to be moved to a female prison. Well, they subsequently had sex with the female prisoners, subsequently had sex with the female prison staff, and quite often against the will of both. Rape after rape, sexual assault after sexual assault took place on the Scottish prison estate because it was a heresy to question whether that hairy arse stabber and robber that went into prison as a man could now be denied the pleasures of redefining themselves as a woman. None of this is made up, dear viewers from other parts of the world. All of this happened and would have gone on happening until today's ruling of the Supreme Court, which bowls all of these would-be maidens over. It kills forever the idea that someone becomes a woman merely by declaration, and that other women have got to accommodate to their declaration. That institutions no longer have the need to provide single-sex spaces, single-sex wards, single-sex changing rooms, single-sex toilets. All of that will now have to change. The politicians, and I mean all of them, Labour, Liberal, Nationalist, especially Nationalist, work that one out because I cannot, Greens, and even the Conservative Party. All of them bought into this mania. All of them, to a greater or lesser extent, bent the institutions of our land and even the very pronouns of life to what has turned out to have been a here today, gone tomorrow piece of wokery, greenery, and quackery, and it's all now gone. Some are lamenting it. I notice Sky News can hardly stop itself from weeping. Whatever happened to Sky News? Used to be owned by Murdoch, for God's sake. Now its presenters are almost in tears on behalf of what they say is the oppressed trans minority that have been dealt a terrible blow by the 3 Supreme Court justices today. But the truth is that all kinds of things will now have to change. People who are in prison, pretending to be women but not, will have to be moved. People who have been sent to prison for breaking the laws on hurting the feelings of those who merely claim to be women but it turns out were not, will have to be freed. Compensation will have to be paid. People will have to get their jobs back for refusing to twist the very meanings of the English language and the very meaning of biological science. So I think it's a great day. It's a great day, and it's a great pity that it had to be delivered by 3 bewigged Supreme Court justices rather than the common sense of a political class listening to the common sense of the British people. And I think, in a way, that's the most important thing. If you had asked the British people at any time whether they wanted to go down the road to transmania, they would overwhelmingly have said not. Even though great big guns of censorship and algorithmic suppression and just general bad order thrown upon those who took a different view. The vast majority of people were never for this. It was a tiny political class across the political board that led us down this crazed, unhinged road. And in a sane world, in a just world, all of these political leaders, all of these trade union leaders, all of this BTUC, STUC, WTUC, all of them who bought into this crazed nonsense would be considering their positions, would be making way for someone more in tune with the popular mind. But we all know that ain't going to happen. So I take my hat off to the Supreme Court justices who delivered sanity in their verdict today, and I look forward to the resignation of the political leaders, particularly in my own country of Scotland, that have made life actual hell for anyone who stood up against them, and particularly for women's organizations that stood up against them. Those women who wouldn't wished, those women who would not stay quiet. And J.K. Rowling, with whom I disagree on virtually everything else, was virtually driven out of Scotland for her insistence on that which was decided by the Supreme Court today to be simple common sense. But there's so much else I need to talk about. I'd better get on. 245% is the latest tariff that the United States has imposed on the People's Republic of China. In retaliation, China has shown great ingenuity and the value of TikTok. No wonder they tried to get TikTok out of Chinese hands. I'm watching all day now have you seen the J.D. Vance? Turns out J.D. Vance wears eye makeup. I must say I never noticed that before, and I have no real animus against it. As a matter of fact, I quite like and admire him. But when he called the Chinese people peasants in a derogatory way, he certainly could not have been expecting the fusillade of retaliation that he is still suffering. By the way, there's nothing wrong with being a peasant, but J.D. Vance, himself a hillbilly, nothing wrong with being a hillbilly either. But J.D. Vance ought to have known that to use the word peasants in that drip of condescension that he did was effectively saying that the Chinese people were somehow backward, somehow lesser beings. Well, TikTok has leapt into life. J.D. Vance is transformed into a rather fetching lady, albeit with a beard. Well, notwithstanding today's court ruling. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but it is worth seeing. And the Chinese people are appearing everywhere throughout China, in the Shenzhen factories in particular, and showing us just how we've been ripped off by luxury brands over these last decades, since the American capitalism moved the American workers' lunch down to China in the hope of making extra profits there. And my God, did they make extra profits. I'm looking at handbags that retail at $38,000. I know, crazed. Who would pay $38,000 for a handbag? Well, the answer is a surprisingly large number of idiots. And they had no idea just quite how idiotic they had been, because China is now revealing the actual cost of these garments and these accessories that leave the Chinese factory, worth several $100s before arriving on your high street or arriving on your dressing room table at many hundreds of times that value. China is revealing that all that is valued, all that is wanted, desired, maybe even now and again needed by people in the West comes from China. There are still some fools who think that China sends only plastic toys. As a household that never buys plastic toys wherever they're made, we wouldn't know how many plastic toys they actually make. But from iPhones to computers to iPads to the refining of rare earth materials to the high fashion and medium fashion and even low fashion that passes muster in the West today as a must-have, it all comes from China. So China has all the cards. There are other fools who think that the United States is China's biggest customer. It is not even remotely China's biggest customer. It accounts for 3% of China's total GDP if America bought nothing at all from China. And of course they have to, which is why they've rolled back some of the tariffs, because they simply have to buy many Chinese products. But all of Latin America has China as its largest trading partner. Much of Europe does too. The ASEAN countries do. The African countries do. The world truly is China's economic oyster. And ours, it isn't. The Americans, it isn't. And it sure as hell ain't the British. So where's this all going to end? Is it a precursor to a shooting war? Is it paving the way to a trade war that leads to an actual war? Or is it just the art of the deal? Though, as Donald Trump himself wrote in The Art of the Deal, the very worst way to make a deal is to show that you are desperate to make it. But that's exactly what the United States currently looks like. 3 times now they have begged China to call them, but China will never call them. That's just not the Chinese way. So Donald Trump's beginning to make an awful lot of mistakes. In fact, it's hard to imagine a president who has made so many mistakes in such a short period of time as the second term of Donald J. Trump. And it's not just in relation to China. It's far more bloodily the case that the current massacres in Gaza are directly the responsibility of Donald Trump. It's Netanyahu that's pulling the trigger, but the trigger was given to him by Donald Trump, and the green light to pull it was given to him by Donald Trump, and the declaration that the United States is going to become the occupying power in the Gaza Strip, but only once a gigantic international crime of mass, total, forced dispersal of the population, ethnic cleansing with a tin hat on it. That's a very big mistake. It's a very big mistake to be in talks with Iran while insulting them hourly, whilst threatening them half hourly. Who told Donald Trump that that is the way to make a deal? It might be in Minnesota, I wouldn't know, but I know it isn't the way to make a deal with China or with Iran or with the people of the Yemen. They're not like us, Donald. They don't deal in the currency of threats and insults. And if you really want a deal, if you want to avoid a war, you better change your tune, or that's what you're going to get. And if you didn't actually want that, that will constitute a very serious mistake indeed. I've only time to deal with the other very big issue that is in front of us today, and it constitutes another mistake. Donald Trump could have said, should have said, and in the beginning appeared to say, Ukraine was Joe Biden's war. We should never have got involved in it. We've wasted far too much treasure, and far too much blood spilled has been the result. Therefore, on taking office, there will be no more American weapons. There will be no more intelligence flowing from American satellites to little Zelensky and his anti-democratic regime in Kiev, and there will be no more money. And actually, to be fair, he has said those things, but only in order to quickly reverse them. So, right at this moment, Donald Trump is viscerally insulting Zelensky whilst sending him more and more war material, whilst sending him more and more American public money, and whilst, crucially, beaming to him more and more American intelligence. It's not the way to end the war, Donald. Your peace prize has already disappeared out the window. Let's make sure that your second term isn't entirely drowned in blood. My first guest this evening is a man who knows all about war and all about American governance and all about Donald Trump. He's Colonel Douglas Macgregor, so you better hold on until he comes up after this short break. Stay tuned. Big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the new MOATS.tv website. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm really going to make this point as firmly as I can. Every one of you has to go to MOATS.tv and donate something, even if it is £1, even if it is $1, €1. Nothing comes for free. 2 shows a week cannot be produced for free. We need every person watching to donate at least £1, $1, €1. I can't put it more clearly than that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
So the poll this evening, who will win the trade war, Trump or China? It's a binary question. And we're back to binary here in Blighty. At least you can answer on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. 20,500 people have already done so. Get your vote in before the end of the show. If you want to call the show, it's toll free in the US and Canada. The number is +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the UK and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203-966-2625. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, retired U.S. Army Colonel, author and defense and foreign policy expert, consultant, joins us now. Greetings from the land of your ancestors, Colonel, where once men were men and women were women, and thanks to the Supreme Court decision today, it's back again. Men are men, women are women. That's not what I want to talk to you about, but you're welcome to weigh in. It's good to see you again. I wonder if, as a friend, supporter, one-time advisor to the Trump camp, you are dismayed by the number of wars that the peace candidate Donald Trump is now either in or looking like he might be about to get in.
George, it's good to see you as well. And first, let me congratulate the British court on figuring out truth for a change. Hopefully somebody in the United States is paying attention so that we can get out of this crazy business of arguing that men and women are artificial constructs when in fact they're very real. You're right, George. I am disappointed because I do know President Trump, and my disappointment is twofold. First of all, his choice of people to surround himself with leaves much to be desired. These people are not knowledgeable about the international system. I'm not sure they understand much about the economic system either at this point. But most important, it's not enough to want peace. You have to make it happen. Peace does not keep itself. I don't think President Trump has figured that out yet. And the notion that he could wave a wand and have an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine was never a logical step. And as you pointed out in your comments, the first thing he had to do was announce, look, I didn't want this war. I didn't start it. I don't want it to go on. So I am immediately halting all further military aid to Ukraine. And I'm withdrawing all U.S. personnel, people in and out of uniform, out of Ukraine within the next 48 hours. Had he done that, the world would probably be his oyster, because I think we know that President Putin is not interested in continuing this war, contrary to the propaganda, which is very thick in your part of the world, but also to some extent in Washington here. He has no appetite for a war of conquest in Eastern Europe.
But it is beginning to look like, just as before, that some in his own camp are sabotaging his intentions. I mean, if I were taking a stab at it, I'd say that General Kellogg and little Marco Rubio are not as interested in bringing about an end to the war in Ukraine as Donald Trump and Elon Musk might be. What would you say to that?
Listen, I think you're spot on. Trump's instincts are pretty good on these things, but he has bad habit of not following his instincts and listening too much to people. I also think he's trapped by people who say, well, Mr. President, we need a win. You have to have a win. You can't go along with something. It has to bear your imprint. In other words, you have to be the author of peace. Instead of telling him, Mr. President, you're right. We have no long-term strategic interest in Ukraine except stability and peace. We have no interest in what happens, especially in Eastern Ukraine. So let's host a conference and help people solve this. That's not what he's being told. He's being told, whatever happens, you are the indispensable superpower. Well, that's a lot of nonsense. We aren't. We should have figured it out by now. I think we're learning that economically as you and I sit here.
Now, there's two other theatres I'd like to talk to you about, and I could pick either one as the second most important, but let me go to the Gulf. As it happens, I know the Arab and Muslim world very well. I don't know the Persians as much as I know the Arabs, but I definitely know them better than some of the people who appear to be advising President Trump. Having killed Iran's national hero, the hammer of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, General Soleimani, in his first term, we now have the spectacle of Donald Trump, or worse, a woman press spokesperson threatening Iran on America's behalf, all the while supposedly negotiating with them. I don't know if that is the art of the deal in Atlantic City, but it sure ain't the art of the deal in the East, Colonel.
Well, I think that President Trump mistakenly thinks that threats work. That may be based on his business experience. I have no idea. I don't think he understands the region he's dealing with, and I don't see much evidence that anybody in his inner circle does. The one good thing that we can say with absolute certainty is that Donald Trump doesn't want a war in the Middle East. That is quite clear. I don't think he understands, though, it's not enough to not want a war. You have to adopt measures to prevent it. And there are various ways to do that. Instead of threatening the Iranians, I think he should seriously consider calling Mr. Netanyahu and say, if you do not cease and desist, I'm going to withdraw all support from you. In other words, stop killing people in Gaza, stop trying to expand the Israeli state into Syria and Lebanon, or potentially into the Sinai. It needs to end now. He's not going to do that because the people that paid for his election want war. So he has to figure out a way to avoid war and at the same time satisfy people who've seen the only solution on the horizon that they will adopt. And that's Libya, as you've heard. The Libyan solution, as enunciated by Mr. Netanyahu, is the one that his supporters in the United States want. Now, that leaves no room for maneuver, no room for negotiation, no diplomacy, nothing. So I don't know what Mr. Witkoff can achieve under those circumstances. But President Trump, at the end of the day, is going to have to make a decision. I was saying recently to somebody, the Kaiser in 1914 was the last man in Europe who wanted a war. Both the British and the French ambassadors in Berlin said that on the day that the Germans declared war. Everybody knew it, but he had to stop it. He wanted it to stop, but it's not enough to stand there and say, I don't want this to happen. I think that's the problem in the Middle East right now, because you and I know that this war, if it breaks out between us and Iran, will not be contained. It's going to spread. Others will come in. I don't see anything good coming out of this for either Israel or the United States.
Every road leads back to Israel, Colonel. It is the decades in which, and it's actually not as many decades as many people think. So in your lifetime and mine, it was once different. The Suez Crisis in 1956 was brought to an end by an American president who told Israel and Britain and France to cease and desist. It is a comparatively modern phenomenon that American presidents are bound to give Israel everything it asks for and bend America's interests to suit the interests of 7 million people thousands of miles away on the Mediterranean.
No, I think it is. But on the other hand, it was pretty obvious that this was coming because the supporters of Israel in the United States control enormous quantities of money. They control most of the financial sector, the banking sector. They control clearly the media. And under those circumstances and the enormous quantity of money that they can pour into political campaigns, they cannot be ignored. So I think President Trump is, as I said earlier, he's in a very tough position. The other thing is that there are a lot of people that simply don't know what's been happening, as you point out, for 70 years. For large numbers of Americans, Iran has been evil incarnate for 50 years, 40 years. In other words, only one side of the story has ever been told. And the fact that the Iranians have bent over backwards, certainly since 2001, to try and end this condition of hostility between us, that never comes up for discussion. And no one is aware of it. Now, President Trump, I think, does know that there is an appetite in Iran for some sort of negotiated arrangement. And that's why he sent Witkoff there. And that's why, if you look at the demands he initially sent, the only one of real consequence to him is the nuclear weapon. And so now there's a focus on that. But that's not acceptable to the people that donated to his campaign. That's not acceptable to Israel. And it's not acceptable to the people that the Israel lobby controls on the Hill. So I cannot predict at this point whether or not President Trump can walk away with some sort of negotiated settlement and avoid a war. It's too soon to tell.
Well, let's turn to the big enchilada. It's not the most immediate likely cause of World War III, although it might ultimately be so, and that's the China front. I said in my monologue on Wednesday, insofar as President Trump is trying to return production, manufacturing, self-sufficiency into the United States economy, he has my full support. That's what I want for my own country of Britain. I don't want foreigners to own our land, our water, our railways, our public utilities, and I don't want us to be an ex-industrial power. So I say this with no animus in that regard, but he's not half making a mess of the way in which he's going about it. He's made America a laughingstock, a meme throughout the world on the China front, and he seems to be doubling down on it.
The same people who want him to go to war in the Middle East and continue to obstruct intelligent action in Ukraine are also telling him several things which are no longer true, George. And President Trump has repeated it. And that is that the United States is indispensable as a market for the whole world. There's nowhere else for other people to go. Everybody has to come to us. We are the center of the universe economically. George, that hasn't been true for at least 20 years, maybe longer. China, however, can probably make the claim that it today is the world's largest and most important market. Everybody wants to do business with China. So threatening China, trying to block China, isn't going to work very well. Second part of this is that we export two things that are very important, but they're not that important to China. One is energy, that's oil, natural gas, so forth. The other is agriculture. Agricultural products are what we export. And if we make it harder for them to get it from us, that's not a problem for China. The Chinese can get that from Russia. They can get things from Latin America, Africa, any number of places where they're all doing business happily. So it was a mistake to assume that based on those two things, the Chinese would have to come back to us with hat in hand. And then finally, the third thing that we export bombs, George. We export military equipment. We export ammunition. That's it. We don't export anything else. What does China export that we need? Well, you've seen that revealed. Electronics, microcircuitry, a lot of complex material that we can't live without. Rare earths. You know, we have rare earths in the United States. We have them in Canada. We've done nothing to develop them. We have not built a refinery for rare earths. If you want to refine your rare earths, you send your bag of stuff over to Kazakhstan or China or out of Mongolia. Why? Because no one has invested wisely in the United States in it. So he was unaware of those things. I think that President Trump labors under the misconception that we are militarily, politically, and economically what we were in 1991. We are. The world has changed. And that's something that is difficult for him to understand because everyone around him is telling him something else.
I think the sooner he gets you and Judge Napolitano and a few other of our friends into that administration, the better. The more fool him for not having done so in the beginning. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, a great pleasure, an honor, as always, to have you on the mother of all talk shows. Thanks for joining us. Who will win the trade war, Trump or China? Get voting. It is a simple binary question, just like the question of men and women. Let me take a quick break and then your calls coming next.
Hello, George. I heard Neil Kinnock commenting on you losing your seat, okay? I was disgusted and amazed at what he said. He was like an ignorant football supporter. He actually punched his fist in the air, saying he was delighted that you were gone, that you were a horrible person. That's the first thing he said. When he was leader of the Labour Party, he was conniving morning, noon and night to kick you out of the party. Now, this is before Tony Blair, and you were in good standing with the Labour Party. Mr. Kinnock, that chap just totally disgusted me. So what I think the British have to do, and the Irish and everybody else, is they need a new conversation and stop drinking Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And I think all those people in British civil society, including Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, Ken Livingstone, and very many more, have to have a conversation about how to wean the British and everybody else away from these Coca-Cola and Pepsi parties.
Nobody knows who Neil Kinnock is. Those who know who he is know he's the man from the Welsh Valleys that betrayed the miners. Frankly, the hatred of Neil Kinnock I wear not even as a badge of honour, a little tiny pin maybe, because pretty soon no one will have heard of him at all. But the wider subject that you raise is the important one. I don't know, Jeremy says he doesn't want to form a party. That's fine by me. I've got my own party. I'll be staying in it anyway. But what I would like him to do is to announce a new popular front, like the one that has just, I can tell you officially, won the French parliamentary elections.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Okay, first up is a legend. Her telephone call was the biggest, singly most viewed telephone conversation I have ever had in the whole history of the mother of all talk shows. She went viral, and she is a legend. She's May in Oklahoma and wants to talk about tariffs and free speech. May, welcome back. What would you like to say?
Hello, my beloved George. Much love and respect to you,
Nice to see you.
and Gayatri and your team. I just had a couple things I wanted to talk about. Trump might have good ideas. I think sometimes he does. But he is impulsive and short-sighted and doesn't realize he is dancing in a minefield. It seems every step he takes, he blows something up. I agree with you, George. Threats and bullying will not work on the rest of the world in the long run. If there are to be tariffs, they need to be decided after much research and deliberation, not at the drop of Trump's petulant act. Second, free speech is in danger everywhere, as you know and say every week. Thank God for the internet, which, despite its weaknesses, allows us to speak freely on issues that concern us, at least for now. Thank you for supporting so many speakers and callers who are not afraid to speak up about government, war, economics, and social issues. George, God bless you. Happy Easter. And are you going to
God bless
Moscow
you,
for
May,
Victory Day?
and I'm very grateful for that, and I agree with you entirely from start to finish. The reason the First Amendment is the First Amendment is because it is the most important amendment, because without it, you don't have any other freedoms. If I did not have the freedom to speak to you and other people to hear the product of our conversation, if we did not have the freedom to bring Colonel Douglas Macgregor to a wider Western audience than he already had as a I hope he doesn't take this the wrong way, but as a singularly American figure. Now he's international, and we've helped make him international. If we did not have that freedom, who would be the loser? Sure, he would be the loser, I would be the loser, but everybody would actually be the loser, because they never got to hear a contrary point of view that may have turned out to be right. And in my own case, have over and over and over and over again turned out to be right. People tell it to me every day of life. People say if only they'd listened to you on this or that. Well, if I had been stopped from speaking, then everyone would have been the poorer for that. And ditto every one of the voices that we feature here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. But here's the problem. We're not being stopped, but we are being slowly strangled. If you look at my monologue from Wednesday night, for example, I haven't looked for a day or so, so I don't know the number now, but it's about a half or even just a third of the viewership of my monologue of just 6 weeks prior to that. It would regularly be a 6-figure number would watch the clip of my monologue. It began to be a thing. Let's watch Galloway's monologue. We might not watch the whole show, but we'll watch his monologue. So the monologue got so popular that it is now being algorithmically strangled. And this death by 1,000 cuts of people's right to speak and to be heard, crucially, is something that we must rage against, but we must find an alternative. We simply can't allow ourselves to be prisoners of Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg, and Mr. Musk, because they don't have our interests necessarily at heart, at least not always. So we simply must break out of the prison which they are currently in ownership of. May in Oklahoma. Thanks very much. Let's go north to Ontario, where Matthew wants to talk about the same subject. Go ahead, Matthew.
Good day, Mr. Galloway. Your website really is easy to use, so I gave an anonymous donation, which is an option to do.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much.
I think it's great for all of us who are against the schemes of the Open Societies Foundation vis-a-vis the victory in Scottish Supreme Court. That's great. Anyway, I wanted to say that I find it quite despicable how willing our media and political elites are in distorting basic facts and truth. They seem to want to own factual reality itself, like the tariff narrative, for example. It's kind of presented as an offensive, like, make them pay sort of tactic, but it's little more than a type of punitive tax on domestic importers. And they really don't care, and I do think China will win this trade war because of their focus on cooperative win-win relationships. Trump should learn from earlier American history, and if President McKinley really is a hero of his, he would do what he did, which is kind of minor defensive tariffs just to protect infant industries, which I know was actually really useful for the early American state.
Well, I agree with that entirely. Also, I'm not against import duties, import controls. If I was running Britain, we'd have import controls. We would protect our own steel industry and not allow Chinese steel to destroy it. We would protect our own car industry and not allow Japanese cars or European cars to destroy a nascent British automobile sector. And I would reopen our coal mines, I'd reopen our oil wells, I'd make Britain buzz and smoke with economic activity, because that's the sort of guy I am, and it's what I think that Britain needs. So I'm not against tariffs, per se. But if you are blundering around like a giant bull in a china shop and destroying everything underfoot, you're actually not helping your own economy, you're harming your own economy. If I give you one example, Matthew, it doesn't apply in Canada where you are, but tourism to America has fallen off a cliff. It's down 40%. And does anyone wonder why? Would anyone want to go to Donald Trump's America right now as a tourist? You certainly wouldn't if you were Chinese or looked like you might be Chinese. You certainly wouldn't if you were a European. You certainly wouldn't if you have a point of view on Israel-Palestine, for example, because you can't even just leave your phone behind. They have taken AI readings on your social media habits, and you simply won't be allowed into the United States. So the 40% drop in tourism is going to harm the American economy very severely indeed. And this attitude of snarling belligerence, whether it's mild-mannered Denmark, pusillanimous Panama, or the mullahs in Iran, or the Arabs in the Levant, you are making enemies forever, and generational enemies forever for the United States. It's unnecessary, it's ugly, and it won't work. Let's take some comments on YouTube. You can scan the QR code now on the screen and leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Michael Ryan did. Made in Britain was a thing in the 1970s. I don't see anything made in the USA in Britain. What do we buy from the US besides weapons? It's a point I've made, Michael. I mean, somebody said you should boycott American goods, but actually, I don't buy any. I used to buy music, but no longer. Grapentine says, did Trump steal the phrase art of the deal from the Art of War, written by a well-known Chinese tactician? Maybe he did. Datsun Lamb Chops 4624 says, China can build anything at ridiculous speed and unbelievably low costs, whereas America has turned into vulture capitalism, where they want to manufacture very little while charging the maximum price, especially if it is tax dollars. And Z.A. Lucasaid says China imports aircraft from America, but cancelled orders for Boeing switching to the European Airbus. This is a very devastating blow to Boeing. Its share price fell 3 or 4% today because China cancelled thousands of orders from Boeing in retaliation to Donald Trump's attitude. And SBBT3IJ says, just like the Chinese guy in China said, look around my house. How many American products do I have? 0. Now look around your house. How many Chinese products do you have? Let's go to Corby in England, where Terence is on the line about the Supreme Court. What would you like to say, Tel?
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. First of all, I hope Norman is okay. Still, the lady is well worth a mention. But I'd like to tip my hat to Lynn Pinches, sister of Barry Pinches, the one that's number, I think Barry made it a number 18 in the world of snooker. Lynn is a pool player. 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago now, she refused to play a man in a dress. She said, I'm not playing a man in a dress. And we were discussing this in Barry's club. He said, I'm 100% with you. If you need any help, let me know if I can help you in any way. And this common sense from people in wigs today is nothing other than common sense. I'd like to give a little thanks to people like Lynn Pinches in the British pool circuit. Very good pool player, apparently. I don't even like the game, but she stood by the principle of a man is a man with swinging bits, and a woman is different with different swinging bits, and she would not play a man in a dress. And all those people that have stood by that, well done. And I liked your introduction as well.
Absolutely correct, Terence. This is a great day for all of us, I believe, but especially for those who made a stand, for those who said no, for those who resisted. Their activism has prevailed, and we all owe them a great deal of thanks. Scotland is the place where this poison went the deepest. Scotland actually introduced a law where if I said something that they took to be transphobic in the privacy of my own house, only to my own family, I could still be prosecuted. That's how far the rot went. And it follows, therefore, if Scotland was the epicenter of this unwellness and more crimes against women were committed in Scotland than anywhere else under the banner of this transmania, it follows that the women in particular, overwhelmingly the women of Scotland that stood up against it, the campaigners who were rewarded in the Supreme Court today with a great victory, a sweeping victory, we all owe them a very great debt of gratitude. Thank you, Terence. A big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the MOATS.tv website. Martin Melkonian, Ron Grams, a particularly big donation from Mark Smith, Poe Tham and Don Stewart. Thank you very much indeed. I'm really grateful to you and asking every one of you, before you leave the computer this evening, go to moats.tv and leave a donation, even if it's just £1, $1, €1. On the line from London is my good friend, Hoz, on the Supreme Court. Hoz, what would you like to say?
I just wanted to say it is so lovely to see you smiling like a cat that's got it. It's like a Cheshire cat smiling because of what's happened in the courts today. I want to congratulate you on not bowing to, the wind of everyone saying, this is unbelievable, you are wrong, you should just follow everyone else. And, you know as well as I do that it's an axe that they've been holding over the head of the left. Do you know why we can't get together with the other parties? And I think it's, now that's been put to bed and it's something like that, maybe, people need to come together and we need to make them understand that we were right, you were wrong. Let's not just allow these things to stay. Let's see if we can form something, and accept the fact that we are the sixth largest party in this country. We're the only party that's polled over 200,000 people at a general election that's had a socialist and a left-leaning, we are the party that people need to come to. So I want to just say congratulations to you for what you've done, and I hope that people on the left can accept and put it behind them and reach out to us and see what we can do together and try and bring their country back from the direction it's going with Reform, Tories and everyone else who are not good for the nation. They're not good for the soul of Britain. They are not good for the civil society of our country.
No, that's right. I'm grateful. Thank you. I hadn't realized I was beaming quite so ear to ear. I should have controlled my body language better, perhaps. But I have myself some scars in this regard. I have been traduced and wounded by the prevailing orthodoxy of what calls itself the left in Britain, that trans women are women. That if you were not prepared to say, as I was not, that trans women are women and have all women's rights, then you were blackguarded. You were what's the word? You were calumnified. You were anathematized. You were driven from the flock. And that's what happened to me. And that is what you allude to, why some people will not, despite our 5 years of existence, our hundreds of thousands of votes, our thousands of members, our high profile, they don't want to have anything to do with us because they still believe that trans women are women. Let's hope, as you say, that common sense breaks out in the wake of the Supreme Court decision? I very much hope so, but I will not be holding my breath. We just have to keep on keeping on. Thank you, Hawes, and get well soon. Now, look, it was a huge week for the podcast. Top 80 in the UK, India, Australia, Russia, and China this past week. Still top 10 in South Africa and Singapore. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. But you can also listen to the podcast on our website, moats.tv. Let's take a quick call before the break. Sean in Enfield is either from or wants to talk about an English Republican Party. Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, George, how you doing?
All good, sir. What do you want to say?
I would just like to know when you're going to start the English Republican Party, because you always say that you're Republican. So you should start a Republican Party in the UK, and you will take all the votes. Believe me, now you will.
Well, we do. We are, Sean. The Workers' Party of Britain is a Republican Party. And so with all our other attributes, that's definitely one of them. We say there must be a referendum on the continuation of the monarchy. There should have been one upon the demise of the late Queen. There definitely must be one upon the demise of the current king. We're strongly Republican, Sean. Strongly.
Yeah, but George, you need to put the message out there stronger, because Farage, the young people are that young and stupid, they're going to vote for Farage. Well, if you can pump the message out harder that republicanism is the way forward, then maybe you will have a chance.
All right, I'll do my best. Thanks for the tip. Thanks, Sean in Enfield. Who will win the trade war, Trump or China? 21,441 people have voted so far, and it's overwhelmingly looking like the audience thinks it will be China. On Telegram, 90% say China. On X, 73% China. YouTube community poll, 80% China. YouTube stream, 90% China. But you've still got 40 minutes to get your vote in. Get it in now on Telegram, t.me/George Galloway. On X, my Twitter handle, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Coming up after the break is a young man that we got used to seeing very often indeed, and for a variety of reasons, certainly out with his control. We've seen very little of him of late, and we'll explore why when he comes up after this break. It's the one and only Richard Medhurst. Stay tuned.
Many people today struggle with the common mainstream media consumer. These types of people are mindless zombies. Instead of living authentically, they feed off masking their true thoughts and feelings, doing nothing and criticizing those who actually do their research. This type of media consumer can be highly manipulative, so here are some golden standard clapbacks when they start with their propaganda. When they say you are too much for them, show them a mirror and tell them to look for less. Draw a diagram of where your business is and their business is, to visually show them they are in the wrong area. When they say, please watch this clip from this reputable BBC journalist, remind them that there are no longer any reputable BBC journalists, and to instead watch the mother of all talk shows for some real journalism. The next time you encounter a brainwashed zombie, hold your head high and know their obsession to eat your brain is masking their jealousy of your confidence, your freedom in self-expression, and most importantly, your authenticity. Keep listening to learn more on the mother of all talk shows.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Okay, get voting. Who will win the trade war, Trump or China? Now, Richard Medhurst, one of the brightest young stars in the internet, on the political scene for many, many a year, was firing on all cylinders for justice and for peace, and then it came to an abrupt halt, if not halt, then hiatus. But he's back, and he's with us now this evening. Richard, many, many people will be very happy to see your face again, hear your voice again. There's so much to talk about, but let's begin with what happened to you, what's happening now, and what we can do to help.
Hi, George. It's good to be back on the program, and I've been watching since the top of the hour, so very good stuff. And it's well, basically what happened is sort of a sequel to my arrest at Heathrow. I was summoned to immigration by the Austrians, and this had never happened before in my life. So I was already a bit, a bit suspicious of why they were suddenly summoning me. But I went there, and it turned out to be a trap. It was a ruse, and they lured me there just so the intelligence agency, it's called the. It's basically like MI5. I asked them what unit they were, and they literally told me they're the Austrian equivalent of MI5. Those were their words. And yeah, they basically raided my home. They raided my studio. They were in this room where I am right now. About 6 agents, and they took, thousands and thousands and thousands of euros worth of equipment. Basically everything that I bought since I started journalism. Every laptop, every computer, drive, you name it. And they kneecapped me and my ability to work. And I don't know if the UK had something to do with it, but 1 week before, the UK extended their investigation again. So I couldn't help but think that this is somehow related. And the Austrians took it up. They took it up a notch. They not only accused me of being a terrorist, they said I'm a member of Hamas. And I tried to explain to them that I'm Catholic, and they don't allow Catholics in Hamas. So what the prosecutor's writing on the paper is just not physically, logically possible. And it didn't matter. They still took my stuff. And right now I'm under investigation in both the UK and Austria for quote unquote terrorism, directly because of my work. It's only about my reporting, nothing else. So yeah, and in a month I've got to go back to the UK unless they extend it again for the 3rd time. But yeah, I've spent almost the better part of a year under investigation now in the UK, and now in Austria the same thing. So yeah, it's not as free as Europe is not as free as we like to think it is.
No, and it's almost unbelievable that someone can be accused of terrorism for words that they have spoken on air, or words that they have written down on paper and published. What's the mental gymnastics required to say that the Roman Catholic Richard Medhurst is a member of the Islamic resistance far away in Gaza? Were the policemen embarrassed at the inherent nonsense that this is?
I didn't ask, but I couldn't help but laugh, sort of half nervously as well, but also because I was just stunned. I was really stunned at the accusation. It comes from the Vienna state prosecutor, and it's right at the top of the search warrant. And they not only said I'm in Hamas, they said I'm specifically in the military wing in the Qassam brigades, which makes it even more ludicrous. So I don't know what to say really, but I tried to explain to them. I have to admit, I'm guilty for leaving my Christmas tree up a bit too long, but it was very, very early February, and it was still up there. And I said, you do see that tree over there? You do see that? I had my first communion in Vienna, so they have this on record. It's a Catholic country, I tried reasoning with them. It didn't matter really, and their response was, well, we're just following orders.
That's a defence these chaps have run before, and it was considered null and void. So what happens next? I mean, you've said you're supposed to report back to the police at Heathrow next month unless they extend or drop their investigation into you. What can you tell us about that? And then what's the next step in Austria?
Yeah, so the UK, they arrested me on August 15th, and every 3 months they keep extending it again. Again, I leave this up to legal analysts, but some have said that that's probably on purpose, that they keep doing that because, they basically want to keep me in a situation of limbo where, you're uncertain about what's going on. So it's kind of like psychological warfare, but it's also because legally, I am a journalist and I'm the first one to be arrested under this provision of the law. So which shouldn't happen in the first place. But, I don't know what, how it is, what their how they're rationalizing it or what their, inside analysis is. But, that could be one strategy, that they just might keep extending it over and over. And they might as well, they might also charge me as well. And, we have to remember that these are states, unfortunately, the UK is one of them that is, that are complicit in genocide. So if you're murdering babies and blowing people up and turning them into ash, I mean, you're also capable of harassing journalists and cracking down on people. And I think it was Natalie Strecker who's been charged recently in Jersey. You've had many people arrested. Tony Greenstein's also been charged. So I don't know who we're dealing with, really. There's nothing rational about it. So when you ask me what the next step is, well, it could be any one of these three options, and I'm hoping they, of course, drop this investigation because it's paralyzed my work. And in Austria, it's my lawyer launched an appeal against the raid. They upheld the appeal in court on one point, which is a good, it's a small win, but unfortunately, they agreed with all the other points in favor of the government. So I'm still under investigation in Austria, and I'm not going to see my gear for several years. Yeah, I'm basically still in this situation of limbo, but I'm going to try and get back to work because I think that I haven't done anything wrong. I know I haven't done anything wrong. And if there's any criminality in this whole story, in this whole saga, it's blowing up people in Gaza. It's not me or you or anyone else who's been arrested, detained, or criticized for their support of human rights.
Well, let's turn to that. The situation is dire, indeed, in Gaza. Nobody has lifted a finger, neither from the east or the west, to halt what is a genocidal frenzy of violence, which has resumed again with full wickedness and evil. Children, women, men are being slaughtered on a daily basis. What's the end game of all of this? Are they really going to be able to kill or drive out every last person in Gaza?
I think they might just get away with it, George. And I know it's unthinkable to say that, but we've been witnessing this genocide going on now for almost, what is it, a year and a half? It's going to go off for 2 years soon, and nothing in the world has been able to stop it. Not the UN, not the ICC, and lots of people have been out protesting, and that hasn't worked either. And we know that also since Iraq and so on, that you only have the illusion of free speech and the illusion of the right to protest, but the governments are still going to go ahead and commit mass acts of violence and these atrocities. And I think their end game is, of course, to take Gaza, and they're saying very openly, whether it's Netanyahu or it's Katz, his defense minister, they're saying very openly that their plan is to take Gaza, to depopulate it, to expel Palestinians. And Zionists have been telling us this for 100 years. It's nothing really new. And I don't know why people don't take them more seriously or take them at their word, because these people are capable of these atrocities, and they are saying very clearly that they're not interested in a ceasefire. Their idea of a ceasefire is an unconditional surrender, which is not the same thing. When you tell your enemy or your opponent, disarm and I give you no guarantees of peace, that's not a ceasefire proposal. That's you're forcing them into an unconditional surrender. And I wish the media would just call that what it is, because they want to make it seem like Israel is interested in diplomacy. They're not interested in diplomacy. And as a matter of fact, they're still killing their own people. I'm not 100% sure of this, but if this person is dead, but there's one last Israeli American who's in Gaza, Eden Alexander, and from what they were reporting on NBC and other outlets today, the team that was in custody of him, they've lost contact with their commanders, which is the result of an Israeli bombing. So we still have this Hannibal doctrine element of it as well. And my point here is just to say that the Israelis really don't have any regard for human life, even their own citizens, and they're really prepared to go all the way for this Greater Israel project so they can take the gas that is off the Mediterranean shore off the coast in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza. So there's lots of interested parties in here, and you know, it's all about geopolitics and money at the end of the day, and they scored a lot of victories. We have to be honest. The Israelis feel emboldened after they killed Nasrallah, after they took out Sinwar, Haniyeh. They feel emboldened, and the world hasn't stopped them.
Speaking of the Greater Israel project, a part of the pie that they have gobbled in one of these successes that you describe is a significant part of Syria. And according to the flight charts anyway, according to the flight timetables, the president of Syria, self-appointed president of Syria, Jolani, was meeting with the Israeli government in Abu Dhabi just this last week. And it's said by informed commentators that Jolani has promised that by the end of next year, he will have normalized relations with Israel in the way that Egypt and then Jordan have now long ago done. But that won't, it would appear, get him his land back or get Syria its land back. Do you think the parts of Syria Israel has stolen are theirs now to keep, just like the Golan was for many decades taken and then eventually annexed and then eventually recognized as Israeli annexed territory by no less than Donald Trump?
Yes, I think you're absolutely correct in the sense that that land is not going to be given back under any circumstances, and anyone who thinks otherwise is really deluding themselves. And I realize that there's quite a bit of irony in this guy calling himself Jolani and his you know, and how he reconciles his political stance towards Israel's occupation of the Golan Heights. Because you would think the first thing on his mind would be to go liberate it, but on the contrary, we need to remember that these you know, this gang, because that's really what they are. They're an armed gang of Al-Qaeda, ISIS head choppers. They were standing, chilling in Damascus in December and January as Israel was bombing them, and they didn't dare open their mouths. So it takes a special kind of submissive puppet to kind of just sit there under heavy Israeli bombardment and just, you know, not say a word. It really does. You know, we can't fault them for having trained him so well. But when you talked to me about this meeting in Abu Dhabi, and I also heard the same thing. I'm not surprised that this was also held in the UAE, because the UAE have been normalizing ties with the Israelis far before Trump came into the picture with his Abraham Accord. So they've been dealing with them under the table, and the UAE is seen as that person in the region, or that actor in the region, that is going to go and get the others to come on board, get on board with this normalization project with the Israelis. And some people think that, well, you know, if you try and tame the Israelis or appease them by not fighting back, they'll give you the land, and that's just not going to happen. What's his name? Smotrich. He was saying on camera just a few months ago that their plan with their vision with Greater Israel is to go all the way to Damascus. And that's what they've done, almost. They're about 16 kilometers away from Damascus, and they were talking about coming into Jaramana, which is basically Damascus. It's on the outskirts, but, you know, Damascus has grown over time. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they are not just physically there with their troops, but their man, you know, Jolani is their man. And he is the one running the country now, whether we like it or not. And he's Israel's man. He has allowed them to bomb Syria, disarm it. Syria has no more leverage in any capacity. And now it's a neutered state, you know, and it's carved up not just by the Israelis, but the Americans have 1/3, the Turks have 1/3. And this is the end result. And we warned people about this, but they didn't listen.
Indeed. How can people stay in touch with you, Richard? I know messages coming in plentifully here. People want to know what it is that you're doing now, where they can follow you, how they can support you.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it. And basically, they can find my videos on youtube.com/Richard Medhurst and patreon.com/Richard Medhurst. And if they need to contact me, it's richiemedhurst@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope you get a boost to your audience and that things get better for you. Richard Medhurst, independent journalist, political analyst, and for the moment, political prisoner of sorts, albeit not yet, at least behind bars. Unbelievable what they've done to the work of this young man. Let me take a quick break, then I'll be talking with Prince in Texas. Who wouldn't want to hear that? Stay tuned. I've got to tell you, most British people couldn't point out Ukraine or Syria on the map. This is a symptom of the Western decline. So I wouldn't, in other words, beat up the American public uniquely for that. This is a common characteristic. 4 million people watched MOATS. That's a truly astounding number of people. I mean, astounding, but it's still a tiny number compared to the population even of the United Kingdom, never mind the United States, never mind both of them together, and the rest of the English-speaking world, and never mind the rest of the non-English-speaking world. So we have to keep in perspective. We have more people who know more than we have ever had before. But we have a huge number of people who, I'm sorry to say, are mere sheep, who give life's blood if necessary, who give their sustenance financially, and who bray when asked, and dutifully get on board the truck taking them to the abattoir. But it seems to me, given the unique horror of 9/11, the impact of 9/11 on the American psyche, that the very organization that the US government says carried out the 9/11 mass murder of thousands of American citizens is the same Al-Qaeda that American weapons, money, diplomatic cover, and endless propaganda was used to put into power in Damascus. Now, as a contradiction, that is as sharp as it's possible to get as a contradiction. And we must do more to proselytize for that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Who will win the trade war, Trump or China? Get voting on my Telegram, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Let's go. First to Prince in Texas on censorship. Prince, welcome back. What do you want to say?
Hey, George, how you doing?
All good, brother, all good. What would you want to say?
Yes, just talking about censorship. I've always thought to myself, you know, if you have a valid argument and you have the airwaves, which a lot of the people pushing censorship now, wouldn't you want to have a reasonable debate and actually argue your points out and let them win? And it's kind of almost disappointing watching Trump, because Trump won because he actually took a debate. Believe it or not, whether I agree with him or not, on things like censorship and things like, you know, the whole woke culture which came up. And it's sad to see him turn his back on things like that. It's the same thing that got him into power. People's raging against censorship. And you see how easy and fragile the whole Western political sphere is in terms of international law, human rights, all those things. You see how it's just a facade, because it's clear now than ever that those things meant nothing, that those things are... And that only took the coming of the internet to expose those things. Nothing has changed, actually. People think, it's Trump or Biden, or these things have always been there. It's just that with the internet now, we get to see a lot more. And I'm just also curious, how long does carnage has to go on before we actually understand that it's carnage? That's my question.
Well, Bob Dylan wrote about that in a famous song almost 65 years ago. So there's nothing new about that either. It is a feature of our lifetime, Prince, that some people are never allowed to be free. Some people are never allowed to be heard. And some people claim to be against censorship, but they were really only against the censorship of themselves. The censorship of other people, they're fully behind. And of course, the madness of the infatuation with Israel gives that's the zenith so far of censorship. The amount of censorship being applied, even against me, and I'm suffering from it much less than others, over the issue of Israel-Palestine, the issue of the genocide and Gaza and so on, is never-ending, unceasing, completely unceasing. Richard Medhurst gets arrested. The Honourable Craig Murray gets arrested. Kate Clarenberg gets arrested. Others get banned. Others get deported from the United States for co-authoring an opinion in the university newspaper that they were attending at very great cost and on a perfectly valid student visa. It's a kind of derangement. It's the Israel derangement syndrome that has taken hold. For me, inexplicably. I know that Colonel Macgregor's view was that it was all about the Benjamins, and of course the Benjamins cannot be discounted. They are significant, but there's an Irish phrase, eaten bread is soon forgotten. Miriam Adelson's donations are long ago spent. Trump has no obligation whatsoever to Miriam Adelson. He's not going to run again. He won't be asking her for money again. Her bread is eaten. So I don't myself buy that it is all about the Benjamins. Neither do I buy that it's all about the compromat, although cash and compromat are both very powerful weapons in the armory of the supporters of Israel. But I don't believe that either of these two things or both of these two things put together constitute the whole reason for it. Having said which, I'm at a loss, especially during Holy Week. I mean, I know that you're not allowed to say it, but it actually was the Pharisees that demanded the crucifixion of the Messiah, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. I mean, you're not supposed to say it anymore. Even the priests, I'm not joking, even the Roman Catholic priests dissemble about who it was that was saying, crucify him, crucify him. It wasn't the Romans that were saying it. It was the mob gathered by the elite in Jerusalem at that time. And they weren't Romans, bruv. But we're not allowed somehow to actually say who they were. So even in the middle of Holy Week, the infatuation of people who call themselves Christians, who go around with their Christianity on their sleeve, is total. The infatuation is total. so that any censorship against anybody who's making headway in changing the narrative about Israel-Palestine is not just accepted by the political class, it is demanded by the political class, whether they are Republican or Democrat, whether they are Labour or Conservative or Reform. All of them want to choke off the voices that are discordant, the voices that say, well, the Palestinian people have a case that should be heard. Is that mild enough? Is that a moderate enough demand to get me past the Ofcom, get me past the YouTube? We'll see. Now, big donors tonight. I'm really grateful. A big shout out to tonight's top 5 donors who donated through the MOATS.tv website. Ricardo Salavesa, Stephen Hay, Mohammed Hussein, Roger LeBlanc, and Fred Gano. A big thanks to every single one of you. Whether you're one of our big donors or one of our small, I need you. The show needs you. So please check out the MOATS.tv website. Terry is in Liverpool on the British steel industry. On you go, Tel.
Hi, I wanted to talk about British Steel and the fiasco and the recall in the Parliament. But what I was going to say was, you, the great Tony Benn and Arthur Scargill can now say, we told you so. We've had to bring coal in now from Australia. You can't bring it any further, possibly bring it any further from Australia. We had our Grief coking plant, which you'll remember in the miners' strike, was the Battle of our Grief to keep it open, and it's just that coke that we need to keep British Steel going. It's just ridiculous that the panicking now, and it's too little, too late. And what they're worried about now is they're going to put all those people out of work, and it's not going to look good on Labour, and it's not going to do anything for the unemployment figures and the area involved. But I wish you could get out
it's
the
also
on the
iconic. I wish, but he doesn't make appearances. But I wish very much, Terry, that people had listened to Arthur, to Mr. Benn, and to myself. I speak as an honorary member of the National Union of Mine Workers since 1982, before the strike even began. So we've been saying for a long time that a country that is literally built on coal, we have 1,000 years of coal underneath our feet, but we closed all the coal mines, and this madman Miliband, the Environment Secretary in a so-called Labour government, wants to pour concrete into the mines so that they can never be reopened, whilst we're buying coal from Australia. Now, I mean, Einstein had a definition of madness, but maybe this one is an even better definition of madness. Pour concrete down the mine 16 miles away from Scunthorpe, 16 miles, and buy it instead from Australia. I tell you, this net zero madness, this greenery and wokery and quackery has brought this country low. And all of the mainstream political parties are culpable and guilty as charged. Thanks, Terry, in Liverpool, giving me a chance to talk about the British steel industry. Tim Kangaroo says on the comments, Nasrallah was a chump. He could have done something to support Gaza, but he hesitated. Now he's dead. Assad in Syria also hesitated, and he was deposed by Israel-loving ISIS head choppers. That's from the anonymous Tim Kangaroo, who is either in Ward 5 at Broadmoor or is having a laugh. Nihilo Nostrum says, will the church stand up for Richard and help stop the legal persecution he faces? Richard defends a church that won't defend him. Beautifully said, my friend, and a question I wish I could answer. D_M says 36 members of the Board of Deputies of British Jews have issued a public letter harshly criticizing Israel's continued offensive in Gaza. Well, grateful for small mercies, rather too little, rather too late, but better late than never. Kate says if Americans loved Israelis, give them Florida. Leave the Middle East to the Arabs and the Palestinians. And John K. says they made Libya into Syria and aim to make Iran Syria soon. Russia will be Syria and Western Europe is being pre-Syriad as we speak. Eventually all the world will be Syriad with the exception of the ethnically pure. Nah, they might want to, John, but they'll never get away with it. Raphael is in Vermont on Iran. Told you, it's the Global University of the Airwaves. Raphael, what do you want to say?
Hey, Georgie, nice to talk to you. I'm really proud every time I have a chance to talk to you because you are really one of a kind and generation. 5,000 years from now, people will still be talking about you. Georgie, I want to say something. I want to say something about Iran that I haven't heard anybody else mention it, and I would like to get your take. I went back and I'm trying to figure out, what did happen? When was the last time a nation was in that situation where the United States openly say, I'm going to attack you? And what did happen? And I went back to 1971 after India won the war against Pakistan. And United States and England mount a fleet, and they were on their way to attack India. And Russia brought submarines, a fleet, and meet them halfway, and they turn around. And I'm going to go one step further. Not only they turn around, as a result, Bangladesh became independent. And I'm asking myself, could it be that we're gonna see where Palestine gonna find their independence as a result when Russia and China intervene and force the United States to back down? I will listen to you.
Well, it's a perfectly valid point. It's one that many of us raise publicly, but probably many more think privately. Russia's got its hands full. It's already fighting 27 countries of NATO, including the United States, on the borders of its own country. It has mobilized hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It has expended hundreds of billions of treasure. It's got its hands full. It's not in a position to do what it might well have done if things were different. In Syria, for example, or in relation to the Iranian crisis, or even on the Gaza crisis. China is not yet present on the global geopolitical stage with anything like the weight that it will one day possess and demonstrate, or with anything like the weight that its economic power, strength, soft power represents. It is very, very cautious, and too cautious for their own good. I remember, for example, when both Russia and China abstained on the Security Council resolution to declare a so-called no-fly zone over Libya. They say now that they were misled, that they were hoodwinked. Well, if they were misled, if they were hoodwinked, then that's a very sad commentary on their diplomats in New York. Because if I, who left school at 16 never been to a university, no degrees or qualifications or certificates or anything else. If I could see what they were going to do with that no-fly zone over Libya, they ought to have been able to. And the results in Libya are now plain for all to see. They blew the bloody doors off Africa, which has taken to the boats across the Mediterranean ever since. They slaughtered tens of thousands of Libyans. They broke Libya into tiny pieces, all ruled by warlords. They have destroyed what was the most successful Arab country, the most successful African country, where so many things were to the benefit of the population, and indeed wider than the Libyan population itself. They did all that, and they were able to do it because of a failure to veto on the part of China and Russia. So China and Russia don't always get it right. In the past, they have comprehensively got it wrong. In Yugoslavia, for example, if Russia had been the Russia of today rather than the Russia of Boris Yeltsin, then the breakup of Yugoslavia would not have taken the form and shape that it did. Russia is now powerfully on the world stage. China is not yet as powerfully on the world stage, and they could and should have done more. And I've said that many times here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Thank you, Raphael, in Vermont. Let's go to Yasser in Quebec. Go ahead, Yasser.
Good day, Mr. Galloway. First, I wish to wish you, your family, your cohorts and colleagues very happy, cheerful, joyful Good Friday and Easter, a salvational Easter to all of you.
Thank you.
I'm calling about the shadow banning and muzzling of modes, especially your own voice. I think it's hardly a secret. It's been going on. I wanted to follow up on a call I had made on July 10th, 2024, and where I took the liberty of making a few suggestions. I just wanted to, amplify that if there is a problem, using my corporate strategy background, if there is a problem, we need to solution it. We need to, come up with brainstorm ideas on what are the potential viable, feasible, workable solutions to circumvent or to work around that problem. If there is shadow banning happening, if the MOATS monologue or MOATS in totality or MOATS shared across other platforms, not just YouTube, if the views are falling perceptibly, there is drop in viewership and audience, then I guess one of the ideas that I'm taking the liberty of putting forth is mirror channels multilingual, because most of your viewership and audience comes from different parts of the world across continents. I know I've been to Mexico quite a few times where I've shared your shows, and their complaint is that you hardly ever interview anybody from Mexico and hardly ever have Mexican content. I think if there can be mirror channels of MOATS and Galloway, have it out with Galloway in Spanish, in Urdu, in Arabic, in French, that would be one, in my opinion, workable, viable solution to this shadow banning, because there would be content available in different languages on different mirror channels, and they would be shared across media, across platforms, across accounts where you probably don't have as much, command at this point. So that's one. And second, the same that I had made in July 10th, 2024 call, that I would take the liberty of recommending a global road trip, a road show, especially reaching out to Morena Party in Mexico that has now won the second term, 6-year term, Claudia Sheinbaum. I think there is a lot of appetite for your content there, for your brand of politics there. There are people that I can recommend who put out podcasts in English language. They're trying to do what you're doing to your audience. And I think there are quite a few things that Workers' Party, as well as your social media, can leverage from Morena Party and their followers and voters, supporters, donors, funders in Mexico. So that's what I wanted to do.
Well, thank you, and thank you for persevering. And we will look back at what it is that you sent, though I get the sense of it. We have actually had as a guest presenter the highest profile radical philosopher in all of Latin America, who lives in Mexico. He is, in fact, Brazilian, but lives in Mexico and broadcasts to millions of people every week in Spanish. So we have partly met the point that you've made, though perhaps not entirely. Your ideas are very good ones, but of course we come up against resources. I would love to make a global roadshow, but I don't have the money to make a global roadshow. Every penny has to be carefully accounted for here. We simply don't have that budget. Having to implore people to make donations sufficient that we can keep going with 2 shows a week, never mind go on a global roadshow, or having these mirror channels, which is a great idea, a really great idea. If we could afford it, if someone would pay for it to do it, then the show could go out simultaneously with either dubbing or more likely subtitling. That could be done. But again, we'd need finance to draw to everyone's attention that this was now happening. I don't want to exaggerate the extent of the shadow banning. The highest show we've had is 4.25 million. We turned in over 3 million last week. So a significant drop, but still more than 3 million. The thing that is definitely being repressed is my monologue, which routinely had a 6-figure audience, and this week had only a 25 or 30,000 audience. Now, it was not because people didn't want to watch the show, because my interview with Sean Ryan is well into 6 figures and climbing rapidly. So people watched the show. They also watched clips, but they don't seem to have been offered the monologue clip that they had been responding to in such huge numbers over many months, over the last few months. Thanks, Yasser. I'm sure the editor and my colleagues will have taken careful note of what you said, and I promise you we will discuss it. Have it out with Galloway, on the other hand. Why don't you join in? Watch this, see how. Join me on Have It Out with Galloway. Be on the studio wall. Participate in the debate about the greatest issues of our time. This is the place where we tackle the world's biggest problems and offer some of the world's best answers. You can have your say. Write to me at our website at haveitoutwithgalloway.com and join me here in the studio audience.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
So I think we can close the poll. Who will win the trade war, Trump or China? And China has won it out the park with almost 25,000 votes cast. Let's go to Iowa, where Joe wants to talk about the US and China. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I agree with your poll. I think we have to reconcile ourselves to the collapse of the Ponzi economy we've had in the Western world since the U.S. Defaulted and dropped the gold standard. I remember, but though this should have been seen coming, even I know a guy, Doug Casey said 20 years ago that the average American should get a shoe shine kit and learn how to say please and thank you in Mandarin. I would draw people's attention to a recent book by a ex-hedge fund director named David Rogers Webb, who called The Great Taking, and you can acquire it online for free or a hard copy. and I'd recommend watching the documentary, and you'll soon learn that the laws have been changed surreptitiously over the last 4 or 5 decades. And when a collapse comes, it is now legal that our brokerage accounts, pension funds will be bailed in. They'll be confiscated. And this is the law now, and people are not aware of it and can do things to change it on a local or state level.
Well, that's a powerful call, Joe. I've got to say, I don't know where you've been hiding, but I hope you come back. Your level of erudition and eloquence is sorely needed in the United States and by the rest of our audience. It's crucial that the rest of the world knows that America is full of very good people, very smart people like you, and that the ugly American that we watch on our screens, the ugly orange American that we watch on our screens, is not the America that is universal. Joe in Iowa, thank you very much indeed. I'm cutting you short only because I've got my good wife in the studio with me with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, it's anno 2025, and we had the UK Supreme Court decreed that yes, I am a woman, and yes, you are a man. I am speechless. It's a victory, but I am speechless. And it's being treated as really big news, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of a statement of the bleeding obvious, and yet it is actually really big news. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm so speechless. So I shall move on. It is also the 16th of April, which means 136 years ago, in 1889, Charlie Chaplin was born. And he came from poor beginnings, had to work from a very young age in the workshops of the Victorian time, and but became a world...
He was in the workhouse.
Yes, he was in the workhouse.
In the workhouse, yeah.
But he became a worldwide icon in the film industry in Hollywood. But he was also a vocal anti-fascist. He advocated for humanity, for freedom, a timeless message. But he dared. He was not afraid to speak up. No. He had the luck to be so successful in his films that he was able to produce what he wanted. And so...
Although they did eventually.
Yes, of course, just like the previous Hall of Famer, Paul Robeson, he also was a victim of the McCarthyism, and that's why he had to leave Hollywood in the end and not come back. Yeah, not come back for a very long time. But then when he did come back for one of these Hollywood ceremonies, they gave him the longest standing ovation they've counted thus far. So successful he was. So in one of the movies that he was able to make without having to check on his backers was The Great Dictator, in which he plays a little Jewish barber as well as the dictator. And he famously quotes that one does not have to be a Jew to be an anti-Nazi. All one has to be is a normal, decent human being. And if you don't mind, people should look up the whole speech, or watch it rather, but I would just like to quote excerpts from it. Mm-hmm. Soldiers, don't give yourself to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke, it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you.
Amen. Very good. He's a very beautiful human being, Charlie Chaplin.
And as it happens, our daughter is a big fan of him.
She is, unbelievably. I mean, she's 8 years old, and she's a big fan of somebody who burst onto the silent movie scene more than 100 years ago. But she sees in him a stage presence. It's what she first called him, Mr. Stage Presence. And that's what he had when he was on the screen. Nobody looked at anybody else. No. When he came into a room, nobody looked at anybody else. He was a magnetic, charismatic, and quintessentially English, British man. Yeah. And we're very proud of him. and it's wonderful to see.
It's sad as well because his message seems to have to not gone through, and we are dealing with the same issues again.
Well, yeah.
We're asking,
Isn't that the case, that we are constantly having to refight the same battles? Mr. Ben used to say, there's no final victory, there's no final defeat, there's just repeated struggles, oftentimes over the same ground.
Exactly. So this, for example, the trade war, who will win the trade war? This is quite special circumstances between Trump and China. And as the poll shows, people obviously can see that it's China. China holds the cards, China makes the cards. Rob the
China
musician.
holds the cards, China makes the cards. That's a great one.
So Rob the musician says China will obviously win. It doesn't need the US. The Spanish Prime Minister has already flown out to China to sign new trade agreements. The US is fast becoming a opinionated drunken fool in the dark corner of the bar who the punters simply ignore. And Ali Ah says, thunder makes a lot of noise, but lightning does the work. Trump is America, old, fat and flabby, but still able to do damage until it has a heart attack or a stroke. Nakayima Films says, I voted China for two reasons. One, China's government were expecting persecution because the US government was bragging about it after China for so many years. Two, China's leadership stays the same, so once a defensive strategy is planned, it's not to be altered. And this is the beauty, I guess, in it. They stand firm, it won't change after 5 years. The policies might change, but the strategy, the overall approach, will stay the same. And that's to act in the best interest of its own people.
All of which leads me to remind you that we better get on with the two films that we're supposed to make for China this year, and which are now a very long way behind schedule. So perhaps tomorrow, let's make tomorrow a China day, and we answer the questions that we've got to answer and get busy on that. Have you got one more for me before I go to the legend?
I do. It's from our friend, Doc Jazz, who says, Trump is a disaster for the world in more ways than we can imagine at the moment. Of all American presidents, he is and will continue to be the least to push back against the orders from Tel Aviv. He is in complete submission to them, outrageously dangerous. And as for the tariffs, real economists like Professor Richard Wolff, Professor Jeffrey Sachs have expressed grave concerns. And that should tell you something. It did, and they have. At least Professor Richard Wolff did in a couple of shows ago.
It is odd, the point that Doc Jazz makes, that somebody as alpha as Trump should be so servile to another country, and not even another significant country. I keep making this point. I think Chirac was the one who called it a shitty little country of 7 million people, many thousands of miles away. What is this special alchemy which paralyzes the political class all over the Western world and is able to have even a man like Donald Trump eating out of its hand?
Scary.
It is scary. Yeah. Got one more?
Yeah, well, let's go to the Oz veteran. He says it's difficult to win a trade war without an industrial base. And yes, so that's why, as you said before, the principle of these tariffs is good, is to be encouraged. But where's the base? Where do you not start off with something before you implement the tariffs?
You're putting that cart before the horse.
Exactly. That's the big mistake here.
Well, let's go to a legend who was referred to earlier by Terence in Corby, and who is regularly mentioned by people who are in communication with the show, because everybody cares about how is Norma in Bristol. We're about to find out, because she's on line one, which in itself, Norma, is a very good sign. Welcome back to the airwaves.
George, thanks for mentioning me last time on the show. It's very kind of you. really, though, it's a bit of a miserable call. I get so disillusioned because the leaders of all these countries, the greed and the murders and weaknesses, it's awful. And there's so many good journalists, the suffering of Richard Medhurst, and some have been killed and tortured, all these journalists. So it's just so hard to be optimistic. I just listen and I despair a bit, really,
Well, it is hard to be optimistic, and only peddlers of moonshine would attempt to persuade you that there are many great causes for optimism in the current world configuration. There are not. It's entirely rational to be pessimistic about the current situation, but we must remain optimistic in our will. We must remain optimistic in our determination to change it. And if we fail to change it, to hand over the baton to a new generation that will themselves also struggle to change it and improve it and push it forward. But there is no doubt when you hear Richard Medhurst's voice, when you see his face, I saw sadness in his face. I saw suffering in his face. Didn't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's so many other ones that you see on Twitter. People who've been tortured and they've been killed, the journalists. And on Al Jazeera, there's been a hell of a lot of journalists that have been killed. But, I mean, I am housebound now and I'm going blind in one eye. And I suffer and struggle. But guess what? Oh, I do like when you said about Paul Robeson. He's my hero. But apart from Paul Robeson, I'm going to watch Celebrity Big Brother later, George, because the balance is there and it's a good escape, really. So from one serious program to another daft one, that's my life.
Well, look, enjoy it. I can't recommend Celebrity Big Brother, but Gayatri and I are about to start a new thing. It'll go out on my Patreon first of all, and then it'll go on the YouTube channel. We're going to review the shows that we watch, because we watch something every night. And if it's really good, we binge watch it until the middle of the night. So we get through series faster than most couples in the country. So we thought we might as well begin sharing our critique, our recommendations. So we're going to do a television and film review show, Gayatri and me, starting probably the first one we'll do tomorrow if we get the chance.
Good,
so enjoy Celebrity Big Brother. I'm sorry I can't be with you on that, but we are all delighted that notwithstanding the inevitable encroachments of age, that you're still firing on all cylinders, still got all your marbles, and still watching and calling the mother of all talk shows. God bless you. The legend Norma in Bristol, which brings me to the end of the show. It's been marvellous for me. I hope it was for you, and if it was, I hope that you will come back on Sunday and that we'll continue to illuminate, send messages to those who need to receive them, and illuminate through Searchlight the big issues before the country, your country and mine, and before the world. God willing, I'll see you on Sunday with the mother of all talk shows. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.